It's always just between us, all right?
Great to have you on Between Us and 938 Live. As always, on this program, we're going to be discussing great inspiring stories and also relationship issues that matter to you. And today, I'm speaking with my guest, Mohamed Farhan bin Mohamed Firdaus, and he's co-founder of Volunteerism, sharing his volunteer journey as well as the stories of his work with the underprivileged and less fortunate, not just in Singapore and abroad. So, Farhan's going to have a lot of stories here for us today. We're looking forward to that. Hi, Farhan.
Hi, Angela. How are you?
Great to hear you're all excited to share your stories because, volunteerism is something that we really want to crack, these days. It seems like something that, all of us should be involved in, but a lot of times we have these concerns about being busy, about not having enough time. So you're pretty well placed to talk about this because not only have you co-founded Volunteerism has been a big part of your life since you were a child. Tell us about that growing up in an environment where volunteering was very, very much a part of your life.
Okay, I think I first started volunteering when I was much younger. So the thing is, I think it's true vicarious learning because my grandmother was an active volunteer from the paternal side. So she used to volunteer at church. She used to knit stuff and then teach people, especially the elderly, right? So she dedicated her time for that, and then after which. And that was when I was really young, 1-2 years old. And then my dad, as I was growing up, 4 or 5 years old, whenever he was volunteering, because he was an active union leader and he was, at the community as well. So whenever he, there were some volunteering activities or, even at the, I think it was in Scouts as well. So he would bring me over. But, I was just participating. I didn't know that, to be honest, I never knew that one day I would be spearheading stuff. I thought that I would... I thought that this was just something that my dad did, and it's good that he likes it, and
Yeah, tell us about your first experience volunteering, Farhan. When you were just a kid, how old were you at that time?
Okay, I think I was about 11, 12. So what happened was my dad brought me. I mean, that was at the understanding age. So it was during the the month of Hari Haji, right, for the Muslims. So my dad brought me to the mosque, and my first volunteering activity was actually to help, kind of in the process of slaughtering sheep. And then after which, 11, 12 years old, I would be, pushing the wheelbarrow with the carcass of the sheep, and then we would go and chop it up. And so I think at the end of the day, the meat actually goes to the underprivileged to be distributed. But so I went through the whole supply chain system and all that at a young age.
How was that experience for you? I mean, even though, knowing that all this was for a bigger good, I mean, as an 11-year-old, what were your feelings at that time? Well,
I think I feel embarrassed to say, but my first volunteering experience had my hands full of blood.
Not something that was...
but it's for a good cause, so we managed to feed those... because, I mean, the people who came to collect the meat and all that, they were really grateful. But I would say that when I was being involved... I mean, you're still young, so I didn't know. There wasn't much running to it. It was just fun, that's all. But I think, it really got to me, volunteering, when I was presented with the opportunity when I was about 17 years old. So I think it comes with maturity as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So
also the exposure. I mean, along the way, you never really stopped volunteering per se. You've always, in your family, it's been something that's so common. On a very, very much regular basis, you were still looking at your parents and your grandmother volunteering. Yeah, so it's on and off. So it's like, so I was involved, but not so active. But the thing is, it was always a constant reminder to give because I always saw them giving. But when my grandma passed away and then my dad fell sick and all that. So I think naturally it was for me now to lead, and I have 2 younger siblings. They are now following my path. That's wonderful to know. And we're going to hear about their experience as well. In just a bit. But when you were 17, what changed? What made you sit up and say, hey, okay, maybe instead of just being a volunteer, I can start being an advocate for volunteerism?
I think it is the realization that in Singapore we are blessed. That we have a very good, we have very good living conditions and one of the best education systems in the world. And then we have got financial power, etc. So I think what happened was I actually was I went on a project to Thailand, and 17 years old, I was tasked to lead my team with the teacher in charge, etc. And then what happened was I think the exposure really woke me up, so I saw that people, there was, so basically, at the VWOs, voluntary welfare organizations, I was shocked, because I think you need to, in order for you to start giving, you need to kind of experience it. So what happened was, in Singapore, we're so used to it, government helping organizations, giving them funds, and we don't see VWOs on their knees, or but in developing countries, it is like that, because the government is not so ready to help. So I think that was when I came in with my team and we started helping.
What struck you in particular about that trip to Thailand? I mean, you said you saw things that really changed your mindset. It took you out of that comfort zone. Was there anything in particular you can remember now that really made you rethink the way you saw volunteering?
I guess what happened was, it was a situation whereby where I saw poverty in the eye. So there was this boy, he was very hungry, so the thing is, because of some ethnic conflict or whatsoever, so he was actually in a way, because on that day, because we were at the border of Thailand, Myanmar, so there was someone who had just died, and the both sides, Myanmar and Thailand, they didn't allow people to come in to assist, and so it's like they were in a no man's land, for example, and then there was no water, so basically these basic necessities that we live on, that we take for granted, they did not have it. And so I guess realizing that things like that, things that we take for granted, like fresh water that we drink, potable water, and food. Like, for example, we have a lot of things in Singapore, right? Hawker center, you just visit, you have it, right? But for them, what happens is porridge is a staple, and then a tin pig is something that they, that they glorify. It's wow, we're going to have this for our feast, but it's just a tin pig,
Not so much meat on it.
There's not much meat on it, and then chicken, if you want, just buy $6, right? One whole chicken. But for them is they don't have that luxury because they don't have that money. And you can't find it in their village, So these are the things that I thought about, and
I think very essential to the volunteering experience is the first exposure. The time when you first take yourself out of that zone where you're comfortable in, and you see for yourself, what is out there, what is so difficult about life for other people, and then it changes your mind. So innately,
that's right,
it
the
comes from
realization,
you, right?
Yeah.
We're going to hear a little bit more about how that has, manifested in your work as well, and how you managed to co-found a Volunteerius, what that's all about also. My guest today is Mohamed Farhan bin Firdaus, and he's telling us a little bit more about his journey, his volunteer journey, and also the stories of his work with the underprivileged, both in Singapore and abroad. Between Us will continue in just a bit, so stay tuned.
Reset your relationships in Between Us. Our soulful encounter is always just between us on 938 Live.
Co-founder of Volunteerius and sharing his volunteer journey with us today, Mohamed Farhan bin Mohamed Firdaus, is telling us more about his own journey, his own stories that he's experienced while trying to help the underprivileged, both in Singapore and overseas. And Farhan, you mentioned that trip to Thailand really, really changed your view on helping people, on volunteerism. When you came back to Singapore, what were some of the things, some of the changes you made in your life?
Well, I think after coming back, I really wanted to connect with the ground, because I think what I did was I reflected. It's very important when you are doing service learning. You have to ask yourself why. You got to ask a lot of whys. And then so I think coming back, I realized that hey, there are problems overseas, but I'm sure Singapore has its own problems as well. So I think the curiosity kind of spurred me to find out more, because being involved in projects, you understand that the different kinds of poverty and all that, and then that struck me that Singapore has its own set of problems, and one of the reasons why possibly youths in Singapore may not volunteer as actively is which I come into contact quite a bit. They say, "Oh, Singapore doesn't need help, what?" So
okay.
Most of the time, even sometimes when I suggest we talk about Singapore, they think doesn't need help. When I talk about ASEAN, they say, "No, I want to go to Africa."
Right.
And I say, "Hey, come on, Africa is very far away. We have friends and brothers in
right in our back door, right in this country, we have people who need us." What is your response to that? And it is a very common response that people say that all the time. Singapore, do we even have poverty? What do you say to that?
It is a common misconception, you see. And I think I would usually tell people that, there are different kinds of poverty. what we're facing in Singapore is relative poverty. And this is not only unique to Singapore, but every developed society faces the same thing. And it's not just about poverty, but we also have, for example, people who are we have this aging population issue, and people who may not be as wealthy, they get stuck in poverty. And it's not so much about the poor income, the widening income gap, and these are just some problems. But I would usually tell the youths to, because these are very unique. I mean, you can't have a one-size-fits-all solution. And all these different volunteering experiences are unique in their own way.
Right. And we're going to hear about that. What are some of Farhan's, own personal pet issues, I suppose, or people or groups of people that he really wants to target and he really wants to change mindsets about, especially the young people. I think that's what Volunteerism, which I'm going to tell you a bit more about as well, is all about. Today, Mohamed Farhan and Mohamed Firdaus is telling us more about his volunteer journey. Also, the stories of his work with underprivileged people in Singapore and abroad, and why he's so passionate about youth volunteering. All this continuing right after headline news and sports. Stay tuned on Between Us.
Man is a knot into which relationships are tied, but nothing comes between us. On 938 Live. It's always just between us, all right?
My guest today, Mohamed Farhan bin Mohamed Firdaus, is co-founder of Volunteerism, and of course he's been sharing so far his personal volunteer journey and the stories of his work with underprivileged people in Singapore and abroad. Now, Farhan, share about some of your more recent travels or trips abroad as well that you found very, very meaningful. You want to share some of these stories with our listeners.
I recently, in June, I led a team of about close to 15 youths to Jakarta, Indonesia. So basically, this was a project that we've been doing since 2011. So I enjoy, every trip is very different, although we've been to same place, right? And it's important to do a project in the same place because, it leads to a sustainable volunteerism because you're actually building, the community. But every time when I go with the different teams, the experience is very different. And I enjoy doing it because, I believe that because my youth come from different backgrounds and they're of different ages, so I am actually developing them, although it's only a short 14 days. So this is the program under the Youth Expedition Project.
Right. It must be quite interesting to see them as well, see their mindsets change and what things that they're learning along the way as well. What are some of these things that have happened when you went on that trip to Jakarta, especially just a while ago?
Yes.
What were some of the highlights for you?
Definitely, there are two things that maybe I'll just highlight. One was one of the parents, the mother, came up to me and say, "Hey Farhan, what did you do to my daughter?" So that's scary. I said, why auntie, why? Then she said, my daughter, before she came for this trip, she doesn't come home so often. She's always studying outside and she doesn't appreciate my cooking, when I iron the clothes. So basically I just feel used and I do feel loved. But after she came back, she really appreciates me a great deal, and she actually says thank you, And then I explained to the mother, I said the reason why is because I think, your daughter has seen different cultures, different communities, and maybe, like I mentioned earlier just now, we take things for granted in Singapore, but you can't blame us as well because we live in a very quick-paced society.
Right.
So I guess when my youth participants, when they see that the other communities, they're less privileged, they really appreciate the little things that they have. And, family bond, especially in developing countries, the poor communities, their family bond is very tight. They're very close-knitted. Even your neighbor is your relative,
Right.
So I guess they really appreciate their parents after that. And I have another participant. He's a 35-year-old father of 3. So basically he came on the trip to basically understand how he can kind of raise his kids, because he did tell me that he's afraid of spoiling them.
Right.
So when he came, he says, well, you know what, after the whole trip, because we were in the slums of Jakarta, he says, after this, I'm going to expose all my children to the rain.
Oh, wow.
I mean, in a way, to get them to grow and, go through the harshness of life. And
right. And speaking of which, it's actually a great way for young children. I mean, as long as they're mature enough to understand what's going on and to perceive what's happening, for them to be given that chance to be exposed to something that isn't something they're comfortable with. So really, it's quite a good thing that he has seen this for himself, the things that are happening out there, and he wants to bring that to his kids. Tell us a bit about going forward as well. Is there anything that you're looking forward to in terms of some of the projects that you're working on? I understand you work with youths at risk as well.
That's right. So I work very closely with youths at risk. I've been doing it for about since 2009, right? But my organization itself, Volunteerism, we're also embarking on such a project. But I would say that it's very meaningful to work with youths at risk because in Singapore we think that everyone is fine, but our friends who are at risk have a different set of challenges. They may or may not come from lower income background, but what they all share in common is they don't always come from a good family. So, and I think that's really saddening because you see, based on the family background, that can really affect their future. So we look past their socioeconomic status, that can really affect whether or not they have a good career, or they even have the drive to start a family, etc. I mean, so I think that really kind of triggered me to start doing something. So I was involved with first Mendaki, so Yayasan Mendaki, a self-help group. So I actually help the youths at risk, and I meet them once a week for 2 hours a week, and I still do it. So basically, what I do is I am their mentor, life skills mentor, and I also guide them through their studies. And after which, I was involved in Care Corner SG, and this is something that we want to work closely with as well at the Crossroads Youth Centre. So that's one of the meaningful projects.
Right.
So under this project, I am acquainted or introduced with youths who are much younger, because under Mendaki was about 17, 18, and then under this is about 13 to 14 years old, and there were some very heartwarming things they told me. They says, like for example, after about 2 to 3 months, you've built relationships with the youths, right? The most important thing is trust. So I always tell my youth leaders, volunteers, I say, when you want to volunteer, please don't have an ulterior motive, especially when you're working with beneficiaries, because when you go down to the center, you've already built trust, right? Now, when you have an ulterior motive, like say just to clock CIP hours, or
okay,
what happens is, then after you've built relationship, you pull out. It does more harm for them. Because they've given you the trust, they've told you some of the things that, they've opened up to you, and you just withdraw.
There's an element of responsibility that has to go in here, because even when it comes to volunteering, you can't just go in and say, you know what, I'm just going to clock hours, I'm just going to do whatever it is I feel like, and pull out. Especially when it comes to building a personal relationship with maybe young people or even elderly. And in any case, it's really important to go in with the right mindset.
That's right. If you do that, what's happening is you are going to affect the experience of the other genuine volunteer, because where you took only 1 month for them to open up to you, because they don't trust people anymore, and the next volunteer is going to have a hard time.
Making it doubly hard for that person, right?
That's right.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you managed to find time to do all this, Farhan, because you're involved in so many projects. It's really quite a staggering number of projects, both in Singapore as well as going overseas. We're going to find out how all of us with full-time jobs as well can manage to do that in that same way and contribute back to people who do need it. Between Us will continue in just a bit. Stay tuned.
Reset your relationships in Between Us. Our soulful encounter is always just between us on 938 Live.
I've been chatting today with Mohamed Farhan bin Mohamed Firdaus, who's co-founder of Volunteerism, and he's been sharing a lot of his volunteer stories so far. Now, the thing that strikes me most, Farhan, is the number of projects you're involved in. I mean, you're regularly engaged in the local community. You also do regular trips overseas as well.
Right.
And you have a full-time job.
I do.
So where does the time come from?
I'm amazed myself, but well, the thing is, I think what's very important that I learned from my alma mater, SMU, is good time management. So what I do is I apportion my time nicely. So like, for example, I will focus, so if I know that I need a lot of time for my overseas community service, I make sure that my employer does not need me so much to be around when I'm abroad, that kind of stuff. And then, my weekends, I make sure that it is free for volunteering, and yeah, so I think, it's very simple. Actually, it's not that tough. If you love something, and if you really feel very strongly about something, you will make time for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, like you said, it's just as simple as putting it down in your calendar, sitting down, taking some time to just plan it out, what you want to do. Choose the cause that you feel strongly for. I mean, to different people, different things mean more. If you want to work with youths, of course, you can go to certain organizations. If you want to go overseas, with disaster relief, for instance, you can also work on that. So choose it and plan your time. That's your secret.
That's right.
Now, for a lot of parents who are tuning in now, and they're hearing this and they say, yeah, maybe I want to expose my kid as well to the rain, as one of your volunteers have said. Let them see for themselves and be appreciative of what they have. What are some good ways to start?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that it is important for you to do that, because I think in Singapore we live in very good conditions, and children, sometimes if you don't expose them to all the harsh elements, they get spoiled. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing,
yes,
right?
For sure.
So how do we get involved? I fully support family volunteering, and it's something that Volunteerism Singapore is moving towards in the next 1 to 2 years. So we are here to promote volunteerism among youths, but we've identified that it is also important to. So what we're looking at is that youthful families, so like maybe young working adults, to bring their kids who are 4 or 5 years old, that kind of stuff. So I think it's very important is for you to start volunteering, but bring your child out, like for example, but there has to be a dedicated program for that, and not all volunteering opportunities are suitable. So maybe, for example, to Sungai Buloh, maybe that is my favorite place. Everyone in volunteers knows I will always publicize Sungai Buloh. Yeah. So, like for example, there are some volunteering opportunities where you go down to the mangroves. Yeah. So I think what's very important, what I'm trying to say is there needs to be educational element. So a sense of meaning and education, and the kids will enjoy. Yeah. Then like for example, when they go to in this instance, they go to the mangroves, then they will take out the saplings, and then they will transplant it, and then they will go to the coast. So you see a lot of parents, they are against, especially in primary school, secondary school, they're very against their children picking up litter, because they say my kid
is
dirty. No, they don't want their kids to be cleaners. But you see, the most important thing, that's why I believe in service learning. Right. So what happens is you have the guide, then the guide will say, it's very important for us to clear debris at the mangroves, because when we do, then the fish can swim in, then they can spawn, then the fries will, so it's the whole cycle of life, and then we eat those fish. So when the parents and the children hear that, they say, this is meaningful. So that's why I always say education and meaning has to come hand in hand, and then the parents will readily go and pick up rubbish.
Right. I love how it's educational for both parties, right? It's not just the kids that are learning, and more importantly, it's a shared experience. If both the parents and the children go through a similar experience, you're both going through and seeing things together through that same lens. It's definitely a great bonding family opportunity as well. So on a final note, if people are interested in what Volunteerism is doing as well, what does Volunteerism offer in terms of information, opportunity? What can they get?
Okay. 2 things that Volunteerism does, very quickly. One is we try to grow the numbers of ad hoc volunteers, because we understand that there are a lot of young working adults who may not have the time to volunteer actively. So what we try to do, we've been doing it for the past 3 years already. So what we do is we offer ad hoc volunteering opportunities every 3 months. Yeah, we can't do it every month, but every 3 months, and then we have this mega ad hoc volunteer opportunity from maybe June to August. So, but this year will be from August to September. We want to celebrate National Day as well. Yeah, so do stay tuned. Do check our Facebook page.
Right, and speaking of that, the Facebook page that you can be found is www.facebook.com/volunteerism.singapore.
The other thing that we're committed at doing is we already have a big pool of ad hoc volunteers, almost 3,000. So we're thinking, what do we do? Because they do volunteer time to time, and we see some of the same faces again and again. So moving ahead, what we're going to do is we're going to set up youth volunteer chapters. Yeah, I haven't thought of the name yet, but acronym YVC or VYC. So what happens is my guys who are from, my volunteers who are from the ad hoc pool, there are some of them who will join, but of course the best thing here is we offer, the difference between us is what we offer is the different social causes, so they can choose, and then they can choose to volunteer long term.
Right, in something they believe in
That's
as well.
Right.
And once again, if you want to find out more about Volunteerism and how you can also start incorporating volunteering into your life or your children's lives, www.facebook.com/volunteerius.singapore. Volunteerius is spelled VOLUNTARIUS. Farhan, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
This has been Between Us at 938 Live. I'm Angela Lim. Thanks for joining us.
Man is a knot into which relationships are tied, but nothing comes between us. On 938 Live.